Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Macbeth Explained Annotate with Me series. In today's video, we are going to be looking at Act 1, Scene 5. This is a very important scene and probably one of the most sort of studied and analysed scenes in the play. It introduces us to the character of Lady Macbeth, who of course is a very important character. And arguably one of the characters that actively controls and contributes to Macbeth's story arc the most. This scene is quite short, however, it is very, very rich with interesting language and characterization for both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. So, as usual, if you would like to pause, go grab your copy of the text, whether you have a physical or a digital copy, get your pens, your highlighters, any equipment that you need, and press play when you're ready. Scene 5, Inverness, Macbeth's Castle. So Inverness is the name of Macbeth's Castle. We heard it mentioned earlier because we know that the king is going to be visiting Macbeth as a way of honouring him. Enter Lady Macbeth reading a letter. So this whole section here, which you can see is its own separate section because of the little quotation marks here. This section here is Lady Macbeth reading out loud the letter that Macbeth has written her. They met me in the day of success. So we already know straight away that Lady Macbeth, when she's entering the stage, she's holding the letter, she's reading the letter out loud. So we know that the me here, the first person being used, is of course Macbeth. And of course we can guess straight away that he's talking about the witches. So we know that Macbeth, as soon as the witches' prophecy happened, wrote to his wife about it to tell her what happened. They met me in the day of success. The day of success, of course, is the day that he won the battle against the Norwegians. And I have learned by the Perfectist Report, they have more in them than mortal knowledge. Based on really their accurate prophecies, based on how accurate the witches' prophecies were, he learned that they have more than mortal knowledge. So they have supernatural knowledge. Perfectist Report. He is talking about how accurate the witches' prophecies were. And that's how he can trust that they have, something more than mortal knowledge. He's referring to supernatural powers and knowledge. So he's telling her, whatever the witches said to me, they definitely have some sort of powers. That means that they can predict things accurately. When I burned in desire to question them further, they made themselves air into which they vanished. So when I really wanted to ask them more questions and I tried to question them, they made themselves into air. So they vanished into thin air. Whilst I stood wrapped in the wonder of it, came missives from the king. And missives is sort of archaic. It would mean messengers or messages. If you've received a missive, you might have received a messenger or a message. So while he was sort of entranced by the witches' prophecies, came messengers from the king, who all hailed me Thane of Cawdor, by which title before these weird sisters saluted me, and referred me to the coming on of time, with hail, king that shall be. So he's saying, as I was just standing sort of thinking about what the witches told me, messengers arrived from the king announcing that I had become Thane of Cawdor. And he's saying it's interesting because that's what the witches called me. They called, the weird sisters. When he talks about the weird sisters, he's talking, of course, about the witches. And he's saying they called me Thane of Cawdor right before they announced that I would be king hereafter, king that shall be. So they called me Thane of Cawdor before calling me king. And now I did become Thane of Cawdor. This I have thought good to deliver thee. So this, I thought it would be a good idea to tell you about it. My dearest partner of greatness. And here we have our first sort of key quote in this scene. This is the way that Macbeth refers to Lady Macbeth. And we're going to sort of link our ideas here, our analysis of this quotation with some context, so linking AO2 and AO3. Because of course, at the time where Shakespeare was writing, society was very patriarchal and the roles of women, unfortunately, were very limited. And men didn't really marry women to look for companionship. They didn't marry women to treat them as equals or as partners. They married women most of the time in order to have children so that they could, you know, have heirs and pass on their houses or possessions or money on to their heirs and pass on their family names and continue their legacy and their family name. But here what we see is that contrary to these expectations of the time, Macbeth does consider Lady Macbeth as an equal. So, context note. Contextually, so Macbeth uses something we call terms of endearment. And terms of endearment are words like sweetheart or darling, words that you would use affectionately towards someone you love. So he refers to Lady Macbeth as his dearest partner of greatness. And we've got several keywords here. Dearest, meaning he loves her the most. So immediately we can see there is love and affection in their marriage. Partner is very different. It's not just about their love. He sees her as an equal. And greatness, his partner in greatness. He respects and admires her. He knows that being with her, they can be great together. So in this, just this quote alone, if you were, for example, analysing this quote for an essay, for an exam or mock exam, what you would want to do is look at all the separate parts of this quote, all these key words, because all these keywords separately give us so much information. In the space of just 3 words, we've already understood quite a lot about the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and that's a relationship based on love and affection and equality. Of course, we're going to see cracks in this relationship later on, but this is our first impression of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth and their marriage and relationship, and it's quite a positive impression to begin with. So he said he thought it would be a good idea to tell her about what happened. He calls her his dearest partner of greatness, and then he says that thou mightst not lose the dews of rejoicing. He wanted her to be as happy as he was once he heard the news, by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. He's saying, I wanted you to be able to celebrate with me the fact that we've been promised great things. Lay it to thy heart and farewell. So another key quote here, lay it to thy heart, and that's sort of archaic way of saying lay it to thy heart, keep it a secret. So this shows us 2 things. That Macbeth knows that it wouldn't be a good thing for him if other people knew about the witch's prophecies, but more importantly that he trusts Lady Macbeth. He trusts her with what really happened. He doesn't hide the truth from her. And that's something we're going to see often in the sort of opening of the play, the trust that he has for her, which later on he will stop telling her as many things, and that's important because at the beginning he does tell her everything. So this shows us that Macbeth is aware of how dangerous it would be for him if others knew about the witch's prophecies. But also how much trust he has in Lady Macbeth. He can trust that he can tell her about the witches. Not only that, he can trust that she's not going to tell anyone else about it. So lay it to thy heart and farewell. And that's the end of the letter. So I'll just make a note of this here. The letter that Macbeth wrote to Lady Macbeth. And she's reading it out loud. So this next section is Lady Macbeth. So at first she's just reading the letter, and now we're going to get her thoughts and feelings about the letter. And this soliloquy here, this speech that she gives, sort of talking to herself, is really, really important. It tells us a lot of information about her. And she's sort of saying you, Glamis you are, and Cawdor. She's talking to Macbeth. So as if he was here, she's thinking about him. Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. She's saying you will be what you are promised. So straight away, we can say that Lady Macbeth has already decided she will be making the witch's prophecies come true. Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. And this quote is, of course, very famous. You're very likely to be studying it at some point. She's saying, you will be what you are promised. And yet I fear your nature. When she's talking about his nature, she's talking about the nature of his personality, how he is as a person. It's too full of the milk of human kindness. So she's saying he is too full. His personality, his nature is too full of the milk of human kindness. She's basically saying that there's too much kindness in him. But the language that she uses, the metaphor of comparing his kindness to being full of milk, is of course heavy with meaning. So metaphor, Lady Macbeth is saying that Macbeth has too much of the milk of kindness in his personality to take what he wants in life. The word milk is associated with femininity and motherhood. Of course, milk is something that's produced by women or female animals for their children, for their young, to feed them and nurture them. So the word milk definitely has connotations of femininity, of being a woman, of motherhood, of nurturing. And so here Lady Macbeth is talking about something that you would think would be a good thing, a positive aspect of Macbeth, the fact that he's kind. But actually, using this word milk, she is sort of almost, she's hinting at the fact that she thinks that Macbeth is made less masculine by his kindness, that it makes him, by association, because women were seen as being the weaker sex or more vulnerable than men, by association, she's basically saying that he's not, his kindness makes him weak. His kindness makes him unmanly. And this issue that Lady Macbeth has with gender, the pressure that she puts on Macbeth for being a man, and equally the pressure that she feels herself as a woman, is a theme that recurs throughout. But it tells us, it's really interesting that something that most people would consider a quality in a person, Lady Macbeth sees as a flaw. And again, this tells us quite a lot about her. How you would interpret that. So if you had analysed this quote and you'd said, right, this is what the quote means, this is what she's implying, this is what she's saying, then it would be really interesting for you to give your interpretation. What do you think this shows about her? Does it show that she's a woman who values aggression, or a woman who values strength? Does it show that she's a woman who's frustrated with the limitations of her role in society? And that's sort of for you to kind of decide and work out. So it's too full, your nature is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. That would be great. All right, so here we've got archaic, thou wouldst. You know by now how to translate it, you would. You would be great, are not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. She's saying you want to be great. You want good things in your life. You have ambition, but you don't have the illness. You don't have the evil in you to get what you want. What thou wouldst highly, thou wouldst holily. The things that you want that are high, that are great, you want to get them in a holy manner, in a manner that's, that's not sinful, in a manner that's good and holy and pure. Wouldst not play false, yet wouldst wrongly win. You wouldn't cheat for something, but if you won it unfairly, you would still want it. Thou wouldst have great glams, that which cries, thus thou must do if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do than wishest should be undone. She's saying you want to do the things that you'd have to do something bad for, but then you would regret it straight away. So she's saying even if you did do something that you knew you'd have to do it in the wrong way, you would be really scared that it can't be undone. You would wish that it should be undone. And of course, here she's foreshadowing a later theme, which is Macbeth's regret for his actions and the fact that Macbeth wishes that he could take back what he did. Ironically, she will also end up wishing to take back what she did. So this is a really sort of interesting bit of foreshadowing here. Hie thee hither. So hie means like come over here. Thee, of course, means you, and hither means here. So hurry here, come here. She's saying, hurry here, hurry back to me, that I may pour my spirits in thine ears. She's saying, hurry back to me, so that I can pour this imagery of water. We have a lot of milk and water in Macbeth, so that I can pour my spirits in your ears, so that I can influence you with my thoughts and ideas. And chastise with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round. So valour, we spoke about this before. Valour means sort of bravery and courage. And impede is, if you're impeded by something, it's like an obstacle. You're stopped from doing something. So all that impedes thee from the golden round, everything that's in the way of you getting the golden round. So she's saying, and chastise with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round. Everything that's going to be in the way of him getting the crown, of course the golden round is the crown, everything that would stop him, that would be an obstacle from him getting the crown, she will chastise it with the valour of her tongue. With her words, she'll get rid of all these obstacles. The courage and the bravery in her words will fight all of these obstacles that Macbeth might feel are in the way of him getting the crown, of him getting the throne and becoming king. Which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have the crown withal. She's saying, it seems to me as if fate, and of course fate is like, destiny, whatever greater force controls what happens in the world of the universe, which fate and metaphysical aid is supernatural aid, meaning the witches. So metaphysical, supernatural. So which supernatural powers have already crowned you with. She's saying the golden round that you feel you can't get, supernatural powers have already crowned you with it. You already sort of have it. So in her head, it's almost like a done deal. Now all she needs to do is persuade Macbeth to be on board. Enter a messenger. What is your tidings? Tidings is news. So what news do you bring? And the messenger says, the king comes here tonight. Lady Macbeth says, thou art mad to say it. You are mad to say it. Is not thy master with him? Who, were it so, would have informed for preparation? She's saying, is Macbeth not with the king? Because surely Macbeth would have told me to make some preparations. She's sort of taken aback by this sudden news that, oh, the king is just coming to stay at her castle. She said, well, where's Macbeth? Is he not with the king? Why would he not give me the heads up, basically? So the messenger says, so please you, it is true. Our Thane is coming. Yes, don't worry. Macbeth is on his way. One of my fellows had the speed of him, who almost dead for breath had scarcely more than would make up his message. He's saying, yes, Macbeth is on the way, and one of the messengers had to ride and go so fast to be able to keep ahead of Macbeth. He barely had enough breath left in him to speak the news. So basically what's happened is that Macbeth has found out the king is coming. So he wants to come ahead and try to give Lady Macbeth a heads up. And he sent a messenger ahead of him. But Macbeth is already going so fast that the messengers had to go even faster. And he arrived completely breathless, like barely enough breath to speak. So Lady Macbeth says, give him tending. He brings great news. Go take care of him. He's bringing me great news. And here we know that this isn't good news for Duncan. We know that when she says it's great news, we can put two and two together. She has already basically said, I'm going to make Macbeth become king. And now she's finding out that the current king is coming to stay at her castle. So she sends the messenger to basically be taken care of. And then she has another soliloquy, another section where she talks to herself. The raven himself is hoarse that crooks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. So here she's talking about the messenger, and she's saying the messenger who's brought the news of Duncan coming to my castle is hoarse. If you're hoarse, it's like you've lost your voice. So the messenger who's arrived is hoarse and could barely tell me about Duncan arriving. But of course, ravens also have a lot of connotations to them. They are birds that we associate with death. They are birds that are usually found near graveyards and cemeteries because they eat dead flesh. So they are birds that would have a lot of meaning associated with them. She's saying that's that messenger. So ravens are also birds that we associate with the supernatural, and often, witches and their familiars. Often ravens or any animal that's fully black are associated with witchcraft. So the language that she's using links her closer to the supernatural. That crooks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Yeah, the fatal entrance of Duncan. Duncan arriving to her castle is going to be fatal. If something is fatal, it will cause your death. It will lead to your death. She's basically saying Duncan is going to come to her castle and he's not going to leave alive. And then she addresses, this time, supernatural power. She says spirits. And we don't know who she's talking to. We don't know if she's talking to ghosts or supernatural forces or the devil. We don't really know. She addresses spirits, but we can tell that she's calling on to some supernatural power. She feels like the supernatural has already promised Macbeth the crown. So she's now asking whatever these supernatural forces are to help her. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. Unsex me here is another truly iconic quote from Lady Macbeth, and one that you are very, very likely to study or have studied at some point. She is asking to change gender. She realizes that because of the ideas that are associated with women at the time, the roles of women at the time, she knows that she doesn't have the power and the agency to do what needs to be done, but also there's the sense that she believes that women don't have the strength to do what needs to be done. Lady Macbeth wants. She thinks that being soft-hearted and kind and nurturing, all ideas that would be associated with women at the time, she thinks that all these things are going to make her weak. So it's not really about not being a woman. It's about being strong. A lot of students are going to talk about Lady Macbeth and talk about these quotes and say how she doesn't want to be a woman, how she thinks that men are stronger. It's not really about being a woman or being a man. It's about what she wants, and it's about the things that she feels she can't have as a result of being a woman. And of course, this is because of the very, very limited role of women in society at the time. What she actually wants has nothing to do really with being male. For example, in this day and age, if the story was set in, if this story was happening in modern times, this probably wouldn't be as much of a problem. The things that she wants are the things that she associates with masculinity: strength, agency, control, power. That's what she really wants. So in your analysis, I advise you to not just stay focused on the idea of gender and sex and being a man or a woman, but actually look at what Lady Macbeth really wants and the things that she doesn't have, and then link those things to context and roles of women in Elizabethan or Jacobean times, at the time that Shakespeare was writing, because the way that women, the role of women in society then, and the way that we're treated, impacts Lady Macbeth massively and shapes her character. So this is definitely something that you want to write about. She says, fill me from the crown, the top of the head, in this case, but of course she's not using the word crown by accident. Fill me from the top of the head to the toe, top full of the direst cruelty. Dire, if something is dire, is the worst it can be. So she wants to be full, from her head to her toes, full of cruelty. This is because she knows she's going to have to do something really, really bad, and she doesn't want to feel the pain and the guilt that would come with it. She says, make thick my blood, thicken my blood. Stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. She wants to be unable to doubt herself. She wants to not feel guilt, not feel remorse. Come to my woman's breast, and again with femininity, that rejection of femininity. Come to my woman's breasts, and take my milk for gall, your murdering ministers. Wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. She's saying, wherever you are, you murderous spirits, creatures, come to my woman's breast and take my milk for gall. She wants her milk to be turned into poison or acid. And what she wants really, again, is, if you think about what milk represents for a woman, the ability to nurture and look after a child and give a child life and look after it. She wants to reject all of this. She wants to reject the nurturing aspect of it, the soft and giving aspect of it. Again, it's not just about rejecting gender or sex. It's about rejecting the qualities that she associates with being a woman. But again, it's about power. It's about wanting to have the power to be hard and ruthless and deadly and dangerous, all the things that she feels she can't be by herself. We're also going to talk later on about Lady Macbeth as potentially a mother. It's very heavily implied in the play that Lady Macbeth might have had a child at some point and presumably lost that child. And so when she talks about milk, and especially here when she talks about turning her milk to poison, it becomes this, we can view it differently once we realize that she might actually have been a mother. It could become more effective to us and more shocking that she would be thinking or saying all these things if she was actually a mother who breastfed her child, which she says she was later on. Come, thick night, and pull thee in the dunnest smoke of hell. She's saying, come, nighttime. And she wants the night to be as dark as possible. A pall is like a shroud. a sort of cloth that you would use to cover up a dead body, but in this case, it's used to sort of she's asking for the night to be veiled. So veil yourself in the dunnest, the darkest smoke of hell. Dunnest means darkest. So cover yourself, veil yourself with the darkest smoke of hell. That my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark to cry, hold, hold. She wants it to be so dark that even the knife that she's going to use can't see the wound that it's going to make. And heaven can't peep through the blankets of the clouds. Heaven can't, or God can't sort of interfere to say stop. She wants it to be so dark that she can't see what she's doing and that even God can't help her. And this links her really, really nicely to earlier when Macbeth says, stars, hide your fires. This idea that both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth crave darkness so that they can do the things that they want to do, but in secret and not have to sort of pay consequences for it. And to Macbeth. So Macbeth has come home. Great Glamis, worthy Cawdor, greater than both by the all hail hereafter. So she greets him with exclamation mark and by his titles. And you can tell here that there's not just love and affection, but pride and admiration for him. Thy letters have transported me beyond this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in the instant. She's saying your letters have sort of moved me beyond the present. Your letters have sort of opened up the potential for the future and made me see what could happen, what we could have. And so she's saying to him that she's almost like impatient now for this future that he's spoken to her about, for it to happen. So she's eager now. She wants to move on. She wants to make it happen. Macbeth says, my dearest love. So again, affectionate language. My dearest love, Duncan comes here tonight. Yeah, and he's come to repeat what the messenger has told her, which is Duncan is coming to stay at their castle. And when goes hence? When does he leave? Tomorrow, as he purposes. His intention is to just stay the night and leave tomorrow. So Lady Macbeth says, oh, never shall sun that morrow see. Yeah, he's not going to see tomorrow. Like, she's very, very straightforward with him. She tells him straight away. You know, she's not sort of beating around the bush, or kind of tiptoeing around the issue. She's telling him, no, he's not going to live until tomorrow. Your face, my Thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. She's saying his face is like a book where strange things are written. So she's almost reading his facial expressions and trying to gauge what he's feeling. To beguile the time, look like the time. Bear welcome in your eye, your hand, your tongue. While we're waiting to do these things, you need to look like you need to look the part. You need to put on an act. You need to look like what you should be. You need to have welcome in your eye, in your hand, in your tongue. You need to act and speak and look as if you're welcoming and loving towards Duncan. And of course, this advice that she's giving him summarized by this, again, very iconic quote from Lady Macbeth. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Simile. Lady Macbeth. Now, a serpent is, of course, a snake, and here we'll make a very quick link. Another link to context. This is a biblical reference as well. In the Bible, the very famous story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. So Adam and Eve being the first two humans created by God, were living in the Garden of Eden, where they could do whatever they wanted. There was only one rule in the Garden of Eden that God gave them, which was they weren't allowed to eat the apple from the tree of knowledge. And Satan, who was jealous of Adam and Eve, snuck into the Garden of Eden disguised as a snake and tempted Adam and Eve, and that's how they sinned. This is called the original sin, or the first sin that mankind committed according to Christianity, and this is what got them sort of kicked out of the Garden of Eden and sent onto earth. Satan disguised himself as a serpent or a snake to tempt Adam and Eve to eat the fruit. And of course, in certain versions of this story, it was Eve first who followed the temptation of the devil and who ate the fruit first and then got Adam to do it. So there's also the implication the original sin is meant to be caused by a woman. As some, at the time people would have believed that, unfortunately, and so blamed women for the original or the first sin. And so here Lady Macbeth is not only sort of being like Satan to Macbeth and sort of, or maybe even asking him to be like Satan and to be a serpent in disguise, but she's also kind of taking on the role of Eve, who's tempting Adam or Macbeth into doing something sinful that he's going to, of course, regret. He that's coming must be provided for. They're dehumanizing Duncan and not calling him by his name. There's a lot of talk about business and dispatch and provide, and a lot of very sort of cold business-like talk when they're talking about Duncan, this idea that they sort of dehumanize him so they can sort of separate their emotions from him. He that's coming must be provided for. We need to provide for Duncan when he comes. And you shall put this night's great business into my dispatch. Yeah, again, is very business-like language. Yeah, like a transaction, like she needs, in order to buy the crown, she needs to pay with Duncan's murder, a lot of business talk. So she's saying, you go and you look after Duncan and you just leave everything up to me. I'll take charge. So again, we've got Lady Macbeth and we're seeing her sort of, even though earlier she's kind of, we can see that she's craving power and control, we see here that she actually does have it. She should just tell Macbeth what to do and he does it. Which shall to all our nights and days to come give solely sovereign sway and masterdom. The things I'm going to make happen tonight will lead to us having ultimate power in the future. She's saying the things I'm going to do, the plan I'm going to put together will ensure that we will become king and queen. Macbeth says we will speak further, like we'll speak about this more. So you can tell here that there is some hesitation in Macbeth. And Lady Macbeth says, only look up clear. To alter favour ever is to fear. Leave all the rest to me. So when she says, to alter favour ever is to fear, what she's saying is, fear is very visible. And she kind of, again, is advising him, like, don't worry about it, because if you sort of show that you're worrying about it, people will be able to tell. She's saying, leave everything up to me. You don't worry about it. You don't change your mind because of fear. I will sort everything out. And again, we have her taking control and telling Macbeth what to do. And Macbeth, if you look in this scene, has very few lines. Yeah, Lady Macbeth dominates the conversation. She has the most lines because she is in charge. And we see a lot of we see Lady Macbeth have a lot of power. This is really important because, of course, later on, as the play goes on, she will sort of lose this power. We'll talk a lot more about the relationship between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, but this scene is really, really important and give us a really strong idea of what Lady Macbeth is like as a person, as a character. There's loads here to analyse, but of course, like I spoke about in past videos, make sure that when you read this and when you have your analysis and you know about your context, take the time to form your opinion. Examiners want to know, what do you think about Lady Macbeth? Do you like her? Do you dislike her? Examiners don't want you to just repeat whatever your teachers told you or to repeat whatever other students in the class have said. They want to know your perspective. Why do you think she's this way? Does it make her a bad person? Is her ambition a bad thing? You're allowed to talk about what Shakespeare's trying to do, and you're allowed to talk about what the characters are presenting, what they're saying about themselves. But ultimately, the difference between a sort of grade 4, 5 or 6 and the top grades, grade 7, 8 or 9, is how much you're willing to sort of take guesses and analyse the characters and give your interpretations. I think that Lady Macbeth isn't that evil. She clearly cares, you could interpret her as clearly caring a lot for Macbeth and for his success and wanting to make that happen for him. She clearly can tell that this is something that he wants, and we already know that this is something that he wants because he's mentioned it before. So by making it happen, isn't she in a way sort of showing her love and devotion to him? Is that why Macbeth loves her and admires her so much? Because she has this strength and because she does take charge when maybe he might not want to take charge. The toxic sort of attitudes towards women and femininity in those times is matched by the toxicity of the roles of women, the pressures on, the roles of men and the pressures on men at the time as well. Yes, Macbeth has more agency and more power and control as a man in society, but he also is not allowed in many ways to express his emotions and to be weak and to not fight and not be seen a certain way. So Lady Macbeth and Macbeth both suffer from the sort of rigidity of gender roles at the time, and that's definitely something that you want to sort of start talking about and debating with. So I know this video has been quite long. I really hope that this was helpful. As usual, if you would like access to the document that I've annotated here, please come find us on our Facebook page. If you have any questions about the scene, Lady Macbeth, Macbeth, exam questions, essay writing, context, anything maybe that I mentioned that you'd like clarified, as usual, please feel free to post any questions that you have in the comments. They will be responded to, regardless of when you post your questions, either by myself or Miss S. We're both teachers and examiners, and we would both love to help you in whatever way we can. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any suggestions or anything like that, please feel free to let us know. Give us a follow if you'd like to be kept up to date with our videos. We will be doing as many of the English literature texts as we can, and we'll try to be going in as much depth as we can so that you, whether you're revising or learning this for the first time, hopefully you will be getting a lot of ideas and information that you can definitely use in your exams, because all we care about is students doing well in their exams. That's why we got into the job in the first place, and that's the idea behind the series. I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.